Hello everybody, and thank you for joining us today for the CREST Threat Intelligence Professionals Conference. And we have been running some webinars throughout the day, and there will be some more to come after this great webinar now. I will be handing over shortly to Josh Keeley, who's the Director of Recruitment at Trident Search, and he'll be talking about attracting and retaining CTI professionals into the industry. So before I hand over to him, because I know you don't want to listen to me for too long, I just want to go through that. If you have any questions for Josh, please feel free to put them in the question pane. There, you can type those whilst the presentation's going on, so you don't forget any of them, or you can type them at the end, and we'll get as many asked to Josh as we possibly can. So I will stop talking now and hand over to the person that you've come along to see. So thank you very much, Josh, and over to you.
Thank you, Debbie. Hi, everyone. So as Debbie said, Josh Keeley, the co-founder and director here at Trident Search. I head up the cyber threat intelligence team. Today, I just wanted to kind of, I suppose, present on how best as an employer and a hiring manager to attract and retain your talent within the organization. I think this has become more important as the pandemic has gone on, and it will continue to be kind of a key topic and a challenge for hiring managers. So, kind of, if I could just click onto the next screen. So, a bit of background, I suppose. As a business, as a recruitment agency, we are super driven by data. And last year, we pushed out the first UK CTI market report all around employment. And this year, in January, put out a new survey, which is more around kind of the salaries, how do we retain staff, what are the gripes of employees, looking ahead for the year. So we've roughly got a kind of unique data set of around 350 CTI professionals in the UK. So that's kind of a bit of background around the stats and the analysis that you'll see today. And then the actual presentation and kind of key takeaways here will be hopefully some advice I can give you around where best to find people and how to find them, the kind of interview process and how to keep them engaged in the process. And also, once they're in your organization, how do you retain them and how to help them, I suppose, grow throughout your organization, so looking at career progression. So, quite an alarming stat to start with. I know intelligence professionals love data. 41% of CTI professionals told us from our data set in January that they would be open to a new opportunity this year. So again, quite an alarming stat when you're looking at retention within your team and something we need to focus on. Another stat, which is more of a positive, I suppose, 70% of the industry believe that they are paid fairly. And then this is probably why, because a quarter of the industry are paid over 110K, quite a far cry from lots of the military vets that work in the industry from what the salaries used to be. Moving into, probably not a surprise to most people, but 44% of hiring managers are vets, and that is military and law enforcement. And it's something we'll talk about soon, which is regarding diversity in your workforce. So we start with your organization, your reputation, and how do we first of all bring applications into your, I suppose, hiring process. First of all, it's your brand. It's the marketing aspect. So we're looking at where. So where are you posting job descriptions? Where are you posting social media posts, tweets, and videos? Are your team industry leaders in regards to conferences like CTIPs? Are your team and your organization hosting things like webinars, adding value to the industry and community? To, I suppose, then when candidates are seeing the adverts that you're posting, they know your brand straight away, and it's like, oh yeah, I remember that organization. I saw that one of the hiring managers or analysts or consultants talk at the last SANS conference, the last CTIPs. So just think about where you're posting. So most organizations now, if not all, have a LinkedIn page, but not everybody has a Twitter page. So just think about where your content is going. And then look at next, what content are you putting out? Most CTI providers do now have a kind of weekly or monthly or quarterly threat report that they do push out for free. They get subscribers, and I understand a lot of that is around sales and kind of building that top funnel part of the sales process. But also think of it as another element to improving and increasing your brand awareness. So I know some of the reports are kind of tactical level or strategic, but regardless, think about how it's branded. And also looking at things like videos. There's a stat later on that talks about the engagement with a video post versus a written post. So think about how can we improve the engagement with your social media, the interaction. Consistency. So do you have someone in your organization who manages your social media accounts? It's no good putting a tweet out once a month or a LinkedIn post every now and again when you remember. It's got to be a consistent process. And again, the more consistent posts that you put out there and more content you put out there, again, the better your brand awareness will be for when candidates are seeing your job adverts. It's a place that they want to work because they recognize the brand and they know people that work there. And then just lastly on your brand, employee engagement. So you're advertising for a new role. Are you telling the team that you are advertising for a new position? Can they share, like, comment on job description posts or just general content that you're putting out? The more engagement that your team are involved with, I suppose the wider reach and audience that you're going to receive. So that's your brand. Moving on now to a hot topic, as we all know, it's quite, I suppose, well, very relevant at the moment, diversity. First of all, language. Looking at things like what are you posting? It might be a short status, it might be a data set, or it could be a job description. Are you running this by any females that you have in the team, or ethnic minorities, or the same way you would run it by the rest of your team before you push out a threat report to a client or threat products? Do the same with your job descriptions. Run it by your team, because the language you use might be quite male dominant, it might be quite female dominant. There are also tools and applications that you can use to run the content of your job description through, and it can pick out keywords that will say that word there is too aggressive, it might not attract a female applicant. Then you're looking at location. So again, how do we improve diversity within your organization? There's a stat coming up later which shows the majority of CTI providers in the UK are based in London, and understandably so. So how do you not just attract the London way of thinking, should we say, and also the cost of London waiting and salaries by advertising in different locations around the UK, potentially Europe within certain time zones. So think about where else can you advertise. Benefits. So here we're looking at hard perks, soft perks, like salaries, looking at things like paternity and maternity leave. So what is your policy on that? Looking at things like time off and holidays. Not everybody in different religions celebrates Christmas. So why does everybody have to take a 1 week mandatory break over Christmas? If that is your policy, start thinking about how you can include more of your team, or at least just start thinking about different elements like remote working, for example. You're going to attract a diverse workforce, which is great for like different ways of thinking, especially when you come into like thesis on particular theories. So that's diversity, just something really key to think about. More stats. As I said, videos, and this is from Hootsuite, these stats, attract 3 times more engagement than a written post. So think about pushing out more videos. It could be a 60-second post. It doesn't have to be a long video, an edited video. It could be a raw form. 62% of CTI professionals work for London-based organizations. 3/4 of the industry are male. I don't think that's an alarming stat, and I see that getting better weekly, monthly, and quarterly. We're seeing more and more females come through, especially the education route into the industry. And they're not a surprising stat, but last year we saw 2.5 times more jobs advertised that offered remote working. And yes, it's driven by the pandemic, but I also believe that's going to continue. That trend is going to go up and up and up, which is great for, again, a diverse workforce. Cool, so sticking with your organization, culture, probably one of the most important parts of attracting and retaining talent within your organization. First, mission and vision. So this comes down to purpose. If we're looking at such a large majority of the industry being veterans, for example, who their previous career in life wasn't driven by finances, it was driven by having a purpose every day. Make sure not just internally within your team, but externally, it's I suppose, advertised and promoted what your mission is as a team, and likewise throughout the interview process. Do you talk to potential candidates about this is why we get up in the morning, this is why the team work, this is what we're driving towards? And it also sort of speaks to things like, is there a glass ceiling on their career progression? And if I'm going to come and work for you, this is what we're all pushing towards in one direction. Then we look at autonomy and flexi work. So again, it kind of speaks to the previous comment around diversity and location. I think this is done quite well within the CTI community because the majority of professionals are experienced and have a previous career. But yeah, I think it's just something to bear in mind. When we do go back to normality, people do want to go back into the office for the social aspects, the cultural aspects of doing so, but don't expect them back in the office 5 days a week. So just look at the HR policies going back and how we can continue to support individuals, especially, I don't know, a single parent of 2 kids, for example. How do we support them to continue to add great value to the organization and work around their home life? Soft perks, hard perks. Soft perks, I'm not talking about having to have a ping pong table or a Nerf gun wall, but thinking of things like, we see some CTI providers will post on LinkedIn that they've done a fancy dress last week at kind of end of month wrap up, and it was themed. So events that are potentially in the calendar that your employees look forward to, and it makes them kind of want to be within the team, and again, improve things like retention. Hard perks, so we're looking at here, compensation. Are you fairly compensating your team? Are they paid correctly? Bonuses, are your team bonused for the type of work they do, especially towards the end of the year, to keep them driving and pushing out a high levels of performance when people start flagging towards the end of the year because they've had quite a grueling year. Things like bonuses will keep the team motivated. Employee testimonials. So think of confirmation bias. To attract the best talent, the most important, I think, if I'm a candidate applying for your organization, if I could go onto your website or go onto your social media page and look through posts, and I see a video of someone in the organization who's talking about what it's like to work for you, that's way more important than me speaking to a hiring manager who says it's a great culture, everyone enjoys their job, and we get on really well. That's, I believe, is more important. It doesn't have to be a video. It could be a written testimonial. It could be a Glassdoor review. But these are all kind of prior checks that the best talent in the industry will do before they interview with you or before they even apply for a job. Referral programs, again, nice added extra if possible, to look at stats show that internal referrals will aid retention via a better culture. They're always going to be a better culture fit. Typically, they stay longer because they are a better cultural fit. And if you can create a referral program, whether it be a cash incentive, it could be a day's annual leave, it could be if you refer 5 people throughout a year, we'll put you onto a certification. But again, it's just an added extra and an added, I suppose, incoming candidate talent pool, I suppose, to get more talent. Some more stats. So 56% of employees last year received less than 5% pay rises. I get it, the pandemic was here. However, it's well documented in the industry that cybersecurity done very, very well at the pandemic, and it continues to do so. So again, that comes down to the hard perks, making sure your team are fairly compensated. And I know most HR teams will do kind of yearly pay rises or a yearly kind of, I suppose, salary checks or benchmarking, just make sure it's of market rate if possible. And then just another stat there, over a third of the industry are analysts, no surprise, and just a medium salary there is about 47.5K. And again, that's an average salary. It will depend on things like location. Would you rather pay someone a little bit less and put more money in towards certifications? It could be just as valuable to someone wanting to join the business and stay. Lastly then, on your organization, your business, career progression. This is the #1 reason why people leave and look for new jobs. When we talk to meaningful work, we're looking at, again, back to if it's such a high proportion of veterans and law enforcement in the industry, they don't want to be a cog in the wheel. None of your team want to be a cog in the wheel, just sitting there 9 to 5, pushing out threat reports. They want to have a purpose. They want to have a drive towards improving themselves, helping maybe give back to the industry. Or if you're doing lots of law enforcement work, for example, then helping out vulnerable people or fighting like financial crime, for example. But making sure that is a clear, I suppose, objective, or it's a clear mission within your team. What to highlight during the interview process? I think career progression, if you can have someone, or an example, you have a rising star within your ranks who's gone from intern to manager or senior analyst, senior consultant, get them involved in the interview process. It's confirmation bias again. Bring them in and let them explain to the potential candidate, especially if they're going to be a super talented candidate you're trying to, I suppose, compete for, then get them to explain how their careers progressed working for you, and how potentially if they were to come join you, they could be just, I suppose, an example. This is how their career would progress with your organization. And also, clearly, I suppose, give examples of your talent development plans. So be honest with them and say, look, if you were to join at this level, within the first 6 months in your probation, this is what we'd look to do. Put you on a qualification, do some soft skill training, get you settled in with what tech we use, and then try to somewhat loosely guide them over 1 to 3 years. If you are to stay with us, this is how your career would be on sort of a trajectory path. It's all well and good saying it. We see the big consultancies saying, yeah, we'll put you on 2 qualifications a year. We've got a big budget for training. 6 months later, they've joined, and we are too busy to put you on. Really sorry. We'll look at qualifications in January. That brings me on to training and certifications. Obviously, we're here at CTIPs today, so CREST is probably the highest regarded kind of, I suppose, qualification for threat intel professionals at the moment. We know we have the sort of practitioner, registered, and CCTIM level, and I think the more consultants and analysts within your organization that are qualified, it just demonstrates, if you are a provider, to your clients, this is the level. We have a set standard, and it is CPTIA, for example, that everybody joining us within 3 months will be at. And it's just good for internal career progression. And then if you're an employee within a provider, you want to be surrounded by the best people, and having everybody CREST registered, for example, could be a good example. But then don't forget about soft skills. If I'm an analyst working for you, I want to progress to, let's say my pathway personally is aligned to kind of management. Can you put me on leadership training? It's not all about getting certified and doing the technical skills. It could be about more leadership, soft skill training. Likewise, with analysis, we know, or analysis training, sorry, we know a big part of the CTI job is things like working within the right boundaries and ethical boundaries, looking at like active and passive reconnaissance. And also looking at things like unconscious and conscious bias. So can you put your team on softer skill training as opposed to just focus on the hardcore certifications? Now the stats, just to back up that really, of the 350 people who filled out our survey, 42% said that the reason why they look, or what they would look, is career progression. Likewise, 26% salary increase, and 14% due to the culture. Moves us on to the process. Now we're talking about the interview process. So 6 kind of points here to discuss, and I'll kind of whiz through them. Speed. The speed that you push people through the process, or you move people through the process, will affect greatly whether you are successful at I suppose, obtaining that talent. Push people through the process too fast, and they interview Monday, first stage, Wednesday, second stage, offer out Friday. They can get worried. Intelligence professionals are highly analytical. They need time to process what has happened. They need time to understand your culture, what is the role, and speak to as many people as possible within the business, and then make an informed decision. 5 days throughout the process, and we've seen this before, does put candidates off. It can also seen as an act of desperation that we just need bums on seats. In contrast, take too long for the interview process, and you will lose people to your competitors. As a kind of rough guideline, to hire an analyst, you should be looking at 3 to 4 weeks max. To hire maybe more of the leadership roles, and you've got more stages and probably presentations, then you're looking at kind of 6 to 7 weeks, again, tops. Brings me on to the stages. So don't try and cookie cutter this for every single job that you are hiring for, every single position. stages should be relevant for the type of role or level of role that you are hiring for. So typically an analyst would potentially do 2 stages. First stage, introductory, exploratory chat. Is the role right for me? Is the role right for you? As a company, are we providing what you are looking for, and can you add value to what we need? And then second stage would be more of an in-detail scenario-based conversation around their career, their history, and probably bring in a team member. Whereas if you look for more leadership roles, you're probably going to add a third stage and probably do somewhat of a presentation depending on the type of role. But just think about stages and make sure they're relevant for the job you are looking to fill. Comms, so comms are mega important, making sure they are frequent, making sure they are clear and concise, and making sure you give it comms quickly throughout the process. And that moves on to tasks. Tasks, make sure the tasks are relevant for the role, a bit like the stages. If you are hiring for an analyst, you probably get them to write an example report, just so you can see grammatical errors, spellings, the structure of their reports. So then when they are 6 months into the job, it's not something you find out later down the line, and again, it aids retention. Whereas if you are hiring a client-facing consultant or a leadership position, you might want them to do some sort of a peer interview, a bit like a McKinsey style. You're the new customer, they're the consultant, just to get a feel for how they approach their kind of customer presentations and whatnot. Moving on to relationships, this is really, really important. Many interviews do candidates come out of and they go, whoa, that was really cold. Hiring manager had a sort of poker face on. I couldn't really gauge or judge how it went. This is your chance as a hiring team to build rapport with the candidates, especially the very best talent. You want to give them a nice warm feeling that you are a good company to work for, the opportunity is right, and more importantly, they can work with you for the long run. So yeah, it's not a trade-off. It's not a Western shootout when you're at an interview with a candidate. They need to feel the warmth and yeah, gauge whether they can work with you and vice versa. So build that rapport with the candidate. And then lastly, feedback ties quite nicely to communication, where feedback should be quick. It should be very concise and honest, and very rarely should it be over email. Don't put a candidate through 3 stages of an interview to then send them an automated email response through your portal that says you're rejected. It's a small community, people talk, and the candidate experience is super important for your brand, and it can tarnish your reputation really, really quickly. So yeah, make sure you're honest, and candidates will respect that if you are kind of honest and give constructive feedback. 74% of candidates said they accepted a job. This was last year due to the relationship that they built with the hiring team. This was a survey done by a company called Allegis, where they interviewed 2,500 candidates across Europe, and a big sort of global recruitment agency. And I think that's a really big stat when you're looking at building rapport with a candidate throughout the process. So moving on, in the process, job descriptions, JDs. See there, remove the BS. Things like, we're seeing less and less of this, and job descriptions are being created less and less by the HR teams. But make sure you're not putting, unless it is super relevant and required, a degree for essential requirements. It's a desirable, understood, but unless it is an essential requirement because of the role dictates that it is, remove any irrelevant certifications and soft skills just to try and fill out a job description. Your job spec is not a wish list. Be succinct and no waffle, just go straight to the point. We're seeing too many job descriptions of 3 pages, and again, it just becomes a tick box exercise. Your job descriptions are great, I suppose, an advantage or a chance for you to highlight the culture within your business. Tell them what is it like to work here. Put a link to a video that maybe an employee testimonial was created on a YouTube channel or social media page or a blog page on your website. Also explain to them this is the progression in this role, and there's no glass ceiling effect here. And likewise with the perks, explain the benefits, hard and soft benefits of working for your organization. I think with job descriptions generally, you can't really go wrong if you share it with your team before it goes out. You put yourself in a candidate's shoes if you are looking at the job spec for the first time on LinkedIn Jobs, for example. Which brings me on to where are you posting your job descriptions? making sure that you're not just posting it on LinkedIn and just sitting back waiting for responses. You are being really proactive with the different, I suppose, places that you are sharing. And also who is sharing it. So when you are sharing that job description with your team to try and get their feedback and bounce back ideas around whether it looks like an attractive opportunity, make sure they're sharing it, liking it, commenting on it on social media. And then also when you are sharing it with your internal team, the language check, and this ties back to the diversity point that I made earlier. 59% of applications are made by candidates on a Monday. So everyone gets the Monday blues. Typically, a candidate will spend a weekend preparing an application, whether that be a cover letter, updating a CV, doing their research on an organization. So that comes to when you are posting your job adverts. No, there's no point posting an advert on LinkedIn, paying for it to go out on a Friday afternoon. Good. Last point, you'll be glad to know, and this isn't a plug, but partner with one specialist recruiter. And the reason why I say that is I've been there before, and we're still going through this process with many organizations. When us as a recruitment agency are up against 2 or 3 or 4 other recruiters, all that does, it becomes a rat race. It becomes it's the fastest finger on the buzzer who can send a message out to as many candidates as possible to make sure other recruiters don't get in there. And that it's not very nice to hear, and it's the way the world is, because a lot of recruitment agencies are driven by money and revenue, and we know that, and that's where all that does is add to the cowboy effect that people hate about recruiters, I suppose. So the more agencies you use, you're driving competition between us. You are driving the prices of candidates up because they're getting approached by so many recruiters about particular jobs, and obviously the higher the demand, the more they can put their salaries up. It creates noise in the industry. And also, if I'm a candidate getting approached within a very short space of time after a briefing call by 3 or 4 agencies, it almost shows like an act of desperation from the organization. So just, bear in mind how many agencies you do use. Partner with an agency over a period of time, let's say 6 months plus, they'll end up being your eyes and ears on the ground. Many times I get clients will WhatsApp me and say, hey, we're looking at potentially bidding for this type of work. Do you know how much a resource like this would cost? How quick would it take to get them on board? Is it even possible? And also they can be your eyes on the ground around what are other providers doing, what's the trends at the moment, who's looking, and just keep an eye out for you in terms of recruitment. And having a good partner that understands your business will always improve the candidate experience throughout the process. If you have a recruitment partner who kind of 50% kind of the way there with regards to knowing your business, and they're going to give that 50% to the candidate when on the first phone call, it's not going to attract the very best people to want to apply for your role. And likewise, you give it to one agency, the requirement, and they are consistently working with you, they're going to prioritize your requirements straight to the top, because they know that the chances of them finding someone for you is going to be high, and obviously competition's less. And then lastly, partnering with an agency over a long period of time, as well as being your eyes and ears on the ground, they are your advocates for your brand. They understand over the last 4 years working with you, the retention rates, people that they placed there previously, and the feedback that they've got, projects that you've got going on, and why you are different to other CTI providers or internal teams. So yeah, partner with one good recruitment partner who knows the industry. And just the final stat, you'll be pleased to know how candidates, in January said to us they would expect to find the next job. So you can see there straight away, LinkedIn jobs, a specialist recruiter, and referrals make up the highest proportion. So my closing thoughts before everyone can go and grab some lunch, and before I take any questions. Firstly, think about your brand, your image, how are you portrayed in the industry? Looking at things like communication throughout the process, so the frequency of your communication, the speed at which you communicate with candidates, and reply to things like applications, and also the clarity, so being very honest with your feedback and not just emailing it because it's the easy option and you're busy. Get the team to work together to try and find you the best talent in the industry. Chances are, if you've got great people in your team, they're going to know other people that they've worked with prior, that they've been on courses with, that they can refer. And also it'd be a cheaper method rather than using a recruitment partner. Progression. Don't put glass ceilings on your team if possible. Invest in your team in things like certifications, soft skills, paid time off, benefits. Trust me, it's a lot cheaper and time saving than it is to go out and replace those people, especially in a market that's still quite small and relatively junior. There's only a finite pool of people. And then lastly, like I said just a minute ago, partner with a good recruitment agency. It can be your eyes and ears on the ground, and it can be your advocates for your brand, and can speed up the process of things like references, finding people, and giving feedback and coordinating the interview process to save you time. So that concludes the presentation. I hope you've taken at least a few bits of advice away as to how, one, you can find the right people, and two, how you can, once you found them, how you keep them, progress your employees through the ranks, and then grow an organization that's a great culture to work for. I'll now pass back to Debbie for any questions.
Great, thank you very much, Josh. And that is very interesting to see all the different steps. And I am sure there are many organisations out there that are looking at their processes and probably do miss some of those steps that they're doing at the moment. So that's excellent advice. So we have had a few questions come in. Now, one of these you may not be able to answer off the top of your head, but it said, obviously, when you were doing the survey, how many had SANS CTI related qualifications?
Very few. Twofold, I think, as to why: cost, because it is so expensive, and two, the difficulty of the examination and being able to book a week off work to go and do, if you are doing the SANS course, as opposed to just doing the exam straight away. Yeah, I think because it is so expensive. It's obviously highly regarded. The GCTI, I think you're referring to, is highly regarded, and it gives, yeah, it's a high level of, I suppose, it's respectable once you see it on a CV, but very few in regard, if you compare it to a CREST certification, for example, one purely just because of the cost. We are seeing more and more employers pay for these courses, but yet will then want a return of investment on this, so they might ask you to stay for 12 months, otherwise you have to pay the course fee back. But as it is, probably what, £6,000–7,000. Yeah, not many. Okay,
that's brilliant. Thank you very much for that. And you just got to thank you for the person that had asked the question.
No worries.
So another question that's come in: do you have any additional guidance for hiring inexperienced analysts and career changers?
Yes, we could be here all day about this topic, and it's becoming, I think it's getting better, that people are looking for, we know there's only a finite amount of people who are experienced in the industry, and that's where the skills gap comes from. There's not a people gap, there's not a want or a motivation for people to move from an infrastructure engineer into the industry. But what advice do I have when searching for these types of, this level of candidate is, in your process, we're doing this at the moment for a provider, but the process has to be quite slick, I think, or very structured in regards to things like tasks. So define the requirements that are must-haves, and a lot of them will be soft skills because the candidate might not have the technical skills that you need. But let's say, for example, you're looking at IT engineers from the service desk who want to change into CTI. So they've got kind of basic desktop experience and infrastructure experience. Throughout the process, what I mean by structure is, first stage would be an exploratory chat. Second stage could be a written task, because you don't know how well they can write. And then the third stage would typically be, let's talk about the task. What OSINT techniques did you use to identify if I don't know, an organization was vulnerable for whatever reason, and just start to get that kind of level of thinking, because the soft skills here are way more important, because they're harder to teach than the technical skills, which you can get internal team members to teach, for example. But the other difficulty or thing to bear in mind here is, you put an advert out for an entry-level CTI analyst, and trust me, I've been there, you will receive hundreds of applications, because there's not a demand gap, there's a skills gap at the sort of more experienced level. So I would recommend you either partner with a recruiter to say, hi, we're looking to hire 2 entry-level people. We want 10 people to go through the first stage. We're then going to go 6 people to the test and the report task. And then we're going to go from there, we're going to take 4 people through to final. But be very structured and be very clear on the soft skills that you are looking for, to determine the right people throughout the process, because then that'll help with retention. And then just final point on this, Debbie, is make sure that you are very clear on the career progression. How are you going to bring on 2 service desk analysts, as an example, with no experience in the industry, to get them up to fully qualified CTI analysts who could be potentially in front of clients, or basically running their own clients through a portal, for example, within 6 months. So it gives them a nice warm feeling that I'm going to come and join, and I'm not just going to get 1 week's worth of training and then be left to my own devices, and then we've got a difficult conversation at the 6-month point during probation.
Right,
hopefully that answers that.
Yeah, I think it does. And yes, you got to thank you for the person, so I think it really has. And obviously, you know, you can email us at marketing, or you can email Josh and take those conversations forward. I'm sure he will be happy to help you.
Of course.
So please feel free to do that. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to wrap it up in one question, just do the last question, so apologies. We can always, if people are happy, put any of their questions across to Josh, and we can get back to you with any answers. But so within the industry at the moment, where do you see the most shortages in? So what areas are you seeing the shortages?
It depends who's asking. Depends if you're an end user, a provider, and again, I don't want to answer a question with a question, but typically speaking, we're seeing there's a big demand at the moment, so hence the gap with technical CTI analysts, so analysts that work at the tactical level. We see a lot because of, again, I'm broadly speaking here, and forgive me if I offend anyone, but the veteran world typically has the human intelligence, the OSINT techniques, SIGINT, but less so the technical. And when I say technical, I mean like the infrastructure knowledge, networking, IP addresses, understanding how, if I see a vulnerability when I'm doing my OSINT, I don't know, collections in the morning, how does that affect my customer because they have a certain IT infrastructure setup? Look at the Microsoft Exchange issues recently, for example. So seeing a big demand with, can we find CTI professionals that maybe have a security operations background as well, so SOC or incident response, because the industry has a lot of people who come from traditional intelligence, which is great, like more geopolitical. So we're seeing a big demand in the more technical intelligence analysts.
Great, thank you very much. And yeah, so thank you from everybody that had asked a question. So I think you've done really well sort of answering their questions there. Thank you again, Josh, for a great presentation.
No worries.
And join us on this conference. I'll just hand back to you to just say a last few words, and so over to you.
Thank you. Yeah, just thank you to everyone for watching. Hopefully, like I said, it adds a bit of value into how to attract talent and how to, once you've got them, how to retain them and to fast track their careers. So they're advocates for your business. Yeah, you can catch me on LinkedIn or our website, tridentsearch.co.uk, or just drop me an email. It's just josh.keeley@tridentsearch.co.uk. Thank you, everyone. Cheers.
Thank you, Josh, and thank you for everyone for attending today. We're now going to be taking a lunch break before we start off again for the afternoon sessions. Please feel free to jump on any of those that you wish to watch, and we'll look forward to seeing some of you back for this afternoon. So have a good lunch, everybody, and thanks again.
Bye.